So I'm thinking about the different stuff that I've faced, racism issues here in America. 91, I came to New Orleans, started working for MCC as a laborer. They figured out I was intelligent and so forth. And basically, I worked as an apprentice or plumber's helper, plumber, HVAC tech, warehouse personnel, all for basically no more than like $10 an hour. I could fill many positions, but I wasn't getting the pay that I needed. At the end, basically, I got into MCC services, and basically we would go and do maintenance on air conditioned refrigeration. And they had told me once I passed my certification test that I get a raise and so forth. But once I passed the test, I got laid off. Um, they paid for me to go to Delgado and some schooling there and so forth, which I'm grateful, I'm thankful. But like I said, I never got the pay that I was supposed to. After that, I went to Avondale Shipyards. I went out there and I tested. I want to say Bob Terry was over the Avondale, the electricians division. I tested first class, but he said since I lacked experience, he was going to give me third class. No pay, didn't pay me right. Ended up, um, I remember working in several different areas while at Avondale. At one point, I was in maintenance section, whereas I was repairing welding machines and equipment and so forth, make boxes, and he said changing dial rectifiers. We were changing rectifiers in welding machines and so forth. And then I ended up going on the ship, Bob Hope Fleet, and I got put over the fire alarm system as a third class journeyman, and I had first class people that basically was under my command, and I was telling them what to do, but I wasn't even paid the same. So I left there and then went back. Um, okay, I went there, Avondale, and then I went back. Second time I went back, I got second class. At that time, I was working for PJ Sprunk, and we were test people for the most part. We were setting everything up. We would commission and terminate equipment and so forth. His class, everybody in his class was first class. I mean, his outfit, he was first class. Electronic techs, electricians. I was second class. Still wouldn't give me my money. So then I left, and the last time I came back was in 2004. But in between there, I worked for EIU. EIU, I went out and I started. Like I said, we had this. We were Freedy Goldman. We were building ship in Pascagoula, Louisiana, and then we ended up having this at Ingalls. This trying to take over a contract. Me and a white boy, we went out there. He had his electrician certification and so forth, paperwork, whereas I didn't. But I had the college, and um, they ended up liking me better as far as my work ethics and my intelligence. That we ended up winning the contract. The white boy basically got ran off. They didn't like him, so they brought some other people in, and I went out there, started $18 an hour, and I ended up $18 an hour. I never got a raise. I was over the whole outfit, basically figuring out things on the fly for the company and being instrumental in winning the contract, over $1 million contract. But from there, you know, we went out and we had an issue. Power plants we were having blackouts across the nation, so we started building power plants. Went to Paris, Texas. Paris, Texas. I was building a plant for them up there. Um, and the company that we were contracting from was racist. Whenever my guy, basically, he was an instrument tech, and he was specifically requested to be on that project for GE. there was a conflict between the general contractor and him because they were racist. They were, so what happened is everybody come out there. They would harass him by firing the people for sexual harassment. And sexual harassment has guidelines. You got to be informed that you're being that you're sexually harassed, and there's basically a procedure, documentation. But I noticed that they would just make accusations and run the people off. So that I kind of saw everything coming and I set them up. I really wasn't trying to get EIU. I was trying to get Floor Daniels. Floor Daniels was the company. Racist prejudice. So from there, I ended up getting fired, getting run off because I invited a female to come go out bowling with a group of us, and ended up her father was like the general contractor with Floor Daniels and so forth. He saw the invitation and they put up a hoopla saying sexual harassment, nothing sexual on the letter, just the invite. I see you're alone and so forth. So I just, in a way, honestly, I staged it. I set everything up, just paying attention with how everything was going. So I sued him. Ended up, I got like $8,000 settlement in EEOC from that situation because all I had to do was find out that hey, this thing happened to this guy when he got fired, but the same thing didn't happen for me when the same thing happened to me. So that's all I had to prove. From there, let me see, races. I ended up going for Shell Offshore. I signed up to be an intern with them for, I think I signed up on the list like a year. I had to wait a year and a half before I ended up getting an internship. And throughout our internship, we had certain requirements, and we had to go down the list and make sure we fulfilled. And for the most part, I was an instrumentation intern, and I went out and they attached me with the mechanics who basically worked on pumps and strainers and stuff for the oil rigs and to keep mechanical things operational. I worked with the electrician, worked with the instrument tech, and each person I worked with, basically I helped them solve problems, or I was instrumental in process. Either they use my strength or they use my knowledge, my ingenuity, and so forth. I remember working with the instrumentations guy, and we had one pump that went down, but we had another pump that was part operational. So, but we had an issue to where it was about to go down. So I basically robbed Peter to pay Paul. I borrow what I need from this pump and keep this pump running and order basically everything to get this up and operational. The guy loved my ingenuity, creativity, and so forth, but I got a bad review on all the guys that I worked for. They were, and it was horrible because it was just like I said, racist. One guy, electrician, he didn't realize it was a latch, a lockout device that you had to physically reset once something is triggered. And I kept telling him, hey, we just got to find the latch, and ended up calling the electrician that rotates, and he eventually told us where it was and so forth. But the guy is right up. He was like, well, saying that he was condemning me for not being, I guess, arrogant. I always left room for error. I was like, it could be, but possibly, I would go down and I would just be really attention to detail and not be facetious, not think I just knew it all. And he kind of wrote a negative comment about that. Another situation, we used to get woken up in the morning. We had an event staged for the next morning where we was going to be pulling the pump and doing a big, a little job, and we have to go do like a job safety analysis before we do anything on the rig because of all the different hazards and possibilities. So that morning, the people didn't wake me up, and my clothes and so forth, and then whenever I got up and I got to the spot, the guy wouldn't give me the TSA and allow me to be part. Actually, I still helped in the procedure, which is crazy, but he wrote it to where I missed, the meeting and so forth, and he didn't, and it made me look bad. And it's just several write ups. I realized that, all right, they had a guy, I was working on Brutus TLP, Tension Lake Platform, and they had a black guy he was one of the people that ran the ship half and half. You had a white guy and a black guy. So in a sense, they looked at me like I was a possible another person that could run a whole ship, and they weren't going to have that happen on their watch. All right, so then I worked for Casco Sharp Tech, and I go around territories, and I had Louisiana territories, and I also had Texas, parts of Texas, and parts of Arkansas. We also had Walmart contracts. In my write up, in my initial contract, I was told that I would go on commission after 90 days, after 3 months. Um, Whenever that 3 month time came, this was in my contract. I asked to go on commission, which was, it was like they ended up basically at a 3 month span, the difference in pay, they owed me like $6,000, $5,000 or $6,000 with what I wasn't getting. They Whenever the 90 days came up, they didn't change my pay. So I kept on. I'm like, hey, y'all supposed to, this is in my write up and so forth. So the expenses, my business expenses was getting out, as far as to where I was getting behind. So I had every week I go in the hotel or travel expenses and so forth. I have to send it in, but I have to wait for the money to come back. So in waiting for that, I'd end up to where my budget as far as my family and the household was tight. So money that I received and so forth, figuring that they were going to give me, the money that they owe me off commission, I take it out of that, balancing, my business and trying to get everything in order. 6 months came, and after 6 months, that's when they finally gave me commission. Then they were like, "Well, you owe us $5,000." I'm like, "Well, you owe me $5,000." And that was a stalemate with that situation. And so they was like, "Well, just repay it, and we'll work out what we owe you and so forth." So they started taking monies out of my payment once I started getting commission, and the extra pay really was going back to them in a sense. And so at one point, um, and to be honest, my ex-wife, she was just like, so she was hormonal. She left like twice during the situation. I'm trying to handle. Gina 6 was going on down in Gina, Louisiana, and that was one of my territories, one of the stores or so forth in that area that I serviced. So what happened is they found out a colored person was over it, and I got a complaint that I hung up in a customer's face, which I didn't. And for that, that's the reason why Casco explained to me that they were letting me go. They never really gave me a reason to where I violated anything or contract or this and that and so forth. But I got one complaint from Gina, Louisiana, and during the Gina 6 debacle, and that's why I got fired, from that job. But I'm just noticing it, and then I go out to California and join the IBEW, and I work for them, and they hire me. I take a journeyman inside wireman test, but I get dispatched as a construction electrician, $28 an hour, where I was supposed to be making $48 an hour as a full fledged journeyman. And then once I get accepted in the union, the local, my pay still didn't change to my proper classification, and they were like, "Well, since you were dispatched at this $28 an hour, we can't change you." I'm like, "But then that should mean that you can't keep me either." So from the time that I worked for the same company on the $28 an hour and the change in my classification or acceptance of better yet of my classification, um, I worked January, February, like a month and 2 months without getting proper pay from this company, and then I complained to the big wigs, go through the grievance process, and nothing. Basically, they turn a deaf ear to me. Um, and then I contact other agencies, which are supposed to be checks and balances. Like, it was the National Labor Relations Board. I contact them. They give me information or documentation of other incidents where unions have violated the dispatching procedure and so forth. but yet and still don't represent or reprimand, IBW. They were, and it kind of was crazy. And then I contacted EEOC, I contacted congressmen and so forth, and I'm just like the checks and balances are not working. They're not correcting all these complacent acts to me, because a lot of people, they're in positions and they kind of learn the ropes and what they can and what can't do, and it's abuse in a sense. And the bottom line is they're not doing their jobs, and that's all I ask. Just do your job. This is what you're hired. This is what you're paid to do, and your job description and so forth. So just please settle down and stay within these guidelines and be productive. Be a service, and because that's what jobs mainly are for the most part. So I just America, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of just livelihood here. I look at the foreigners, how they come here and they have all these different things that, their families flourish and so forth, prosper, and they send their money back home. They're doing things, but yet still we can't support our natural resources that are here, homegrown. To me, I looked at LSU, looked at Florida, how they used to recruit heavily in Louisiana athletes and so forth. And we are, like I say, a resource for the nation. And we are prized possessions. And in a sense, I just, for the sake of humanity, treat it justly and fairly, because we are productive, we are beneficial, and we are part of the American culture, part of the American system, that creates this revenue, that creates this money, or this the thing that everybody is pursuing. Greed, money and power and so forth. You gotta look at the basics. I look at us, think about Booker T. Washington. I just kind of found out he wanted us to be like fingers on a hand, separate but equal, but attached and so forth as far as Americans. Me, myself, I'm humanitarian. For the most part, humans are the natural resource. And the bottom line is that without humans, without, certain, I guess, people with skills or abilities to learn and be beneficial, productive, it doesn't, the engine is not going to work. The engine is not going to run or operate properly. I look at us, me myself, I look at us like an engine. There's pistons, there's camshaft, there's valves, valve covers, and so forth. But every mechanical part is instrumental in the operation of that engine. Be it, you think you're gas, the Caucasians, you're the gas in our engines. All right, you get everything running, but yet and still we have to have pistons and cylinders to contain that pressure and transfer that pressure into mechanical strength and energy and so forth. And every part within that engine is important and critical. And for the most part, it plays upon the next. And that's how I look at people and societies and governments. Instead of having these racial, tensions and problems, humanitarian, be humane. I look at all the rights that animals have. If you beat an animal and stuff, they'll come and they'll arrest you and so forth. But as us colored people, we're kind of in a sense treated like homeless. We they don't care about us for the most part. We're not documented in a lot of sense, and as far as the way we treat each other, it's they're able to do what they want to do, because we're not standing together and we're not learning the systems and being able to document certain things that properly, make complaints, that get actions, that get corrections, and so forth. But America has a problem with racism.